talk about an element of this deconstruction, or as I call it, remodeling your faith, that we often forget. I remember hearing a couple of people talking in a cafe about how their faith had changed. And one person said that he bought into what the denomination was teaching, what he heard hook, line, and sinker. You could tell he felt a little embarrassed about the fact that he bought into this theology. As our sense of what God and theology is changes for us, we may find ourselves feeling embarrassed, possibly even a lot of shame about the fact that we bought into something that now doesn't appear to make sense for us, that now appears to have very little biblical context to support it, and that may have no science or no history or no archaeology to support it. There's nothing to be ashamed of if you grew up in a church where everybody believed certain items. That was kind of the denominational teaching, and people didn't really talk very much that wasn't denominational line. It's nothing to be ashamed of. You grew up being taught that. You trusted those people around you who were adults, who were family members, friends, older people in the church who were role models. Nothing to be ashamed of if you ended up believing stuff that you now think doesn't make much sense. There's also nothing to be ashamed of or feel embarrassed about if you met some people who were very nice and very caring, who seemed very genuine and very devout, and they convinced you that their interpretation of Holy Scriptures was the right interpretation, and the church that they attended was the one that everyone really needs to attend, and you found yourself falling in line with that, becoming their friends, allowing them to be your spiritual mentors, and being very devout to this new religion. In fact, because you were so devout, it says a lot of good things about you. But your beliefs have changed. And that's not a sin, it's not a crime, and it's nothing to be ashamed of. Many people were fans of Ford or General Motors or Chrysler or American Motors, and then they changed. And after buying and owning maybe a vehicle made in Japan, they switched, and now they're fans of possibly Toyota or Nissan or Honda, Acura, Lexus. There's nothing wrong with that. And it's the same way when it comes to religious stuff. If you've changed the way you believe, if you've changed what you're doing, you're no longer driving the same spiritual car, that's nothing to be ashamed of. People grow and change in time, and that is okay. It's part of being human, and there's no need to apologize, feel embarrassed, or feel humiliated about changing your mind. The feelings of shame and embarrassment and humiliation and all that stuff is more complex when there may be some spiritual trauma that came with the old faith tradition you were a part of, or perhaps still are a part of. That feeling of embarrassment and shame because, well, you believed things that just don't seem to make sense anymore, or because of the fact that you stayed and put up with some really ugly stuff when you probably should have said, "You don't treat me that way," and gotten up and walked out the door. After I left the church that was my church of origin, I didn't want anybody to know. The memories were painful, there was quite a bit of trauma to deal with, and there was the embarrassment of the fact that it was a church that not only didn't treat people well, but also had some really weird ideas on stuff. Adding all that together just was a topic I didn't want to go to. It took about 20 years for me to get to the point where I was kind of okay with saying, yeah, that's part of my past. And not being reluctant to bring it up because it was a part of my past. And it's okay to have a past that you maybe find a bit awkward and uncomfortable at times. But it was your past. And it is your past, which means it is not who who you are now. You are a different person spiritually, and that is okay.